Hi guys, and welcome back to History Revision Success. So we are going to start our Germany unit. So it's 2.0 and it's for AQA A-level history, and we are starting right back into where we left in year 12, so we can begin with our year 13 course. So in this video, I'm going to give you a really quick run through of the most important people who you should have come across and you should remember from year 12 Weimar Germany. So we're going to talk about all of the main figures so you have a really good grounding in them before we move on and start with the content and the fresh content for the course in year 13. So I have categorized these people for you so they are in kind of categories that will make it easier for you to remember them. And we're going to start with, of course, Adolf Hitler. So Adolf Hitler was Austrian born and moved to Germany in 1913. In 1919, he joined the German Workers' Party and was appointed leader in 1921. He rose to power as the Chancellor of Germany in 1933 and became Führer in 1934. So at the very end of last year, you did that tiny unit where you looked at the Enabling Act, the Reichstag fire, and the Chancellorship, and how he actually cemented his control of Germany. He, as we know, initiates World War II in Europe and invades Poland. So there is a very quick recap for you of all of those points I just mentioned, in case you wanted to read any for yourself. Now, next, I'm going to go through some of his key allies. So people who were consistently on his side throughout the regime, people who he really very much relied on to keep everything running and working smoothly, and people that he didn't necessarily turn on at any point, although arguably perhaps at the very end with a couple of them. So the first person I want to talk about is Joseph Goebbels, and then I'm going to go on to look at Göring and Himmler. Okay, so very important people in the makeup of the Nazi German state. So Goebbels. Now, Goebbels was the Reich Minister of Propaganda of Nazi Germany from 1933 to 1945. He was incredibly apt. He was incredibly skilled at his job. And in a later video, you can watch it to see all of the different propaganda techniques that he used to try and ensure loyalty from the people. Now, he was one of Hitler's closest and most devoted associates, and he was known for his skills in public speaking and his deeply set anti-Semitism, which we see through his speaking, through his communications with his friends and kind of colleagues, and also through the nature of the propaganda that he puts out. Now, the next person I want to talk about is Hermann Göring. So Göring was a German military and political leader, as well as one of the most powerful figures in the Nazi Party. He was named Minister without Portfolio in the new government and oversaw the creation of the Gestapo. Now, again, in a video you're going to watch very soon, I'm going to talk about the Gestapo. He actually lost the power of the Gestapo to Himmler, who I'm going to talk about in a second. But Göring was someone very important in the Nazi state still. He's appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Luftwaffe until the very end of the war. Okay, now we have Himmler. So Himmler, a leading member of the Nazi Party and arguably one of the most powerful people in the whole of Germany under Hitler. He is made the Reichsführer of the SS by Adolf Hitler in 1929, and he combines the SS, the SD, the Gestapo all into one body under his control, making him arguably the head of the most powerful kind of police state in Europe. So he also turns the SS into a million-strong paramilitary group under his control. Now, some say he was the main architect of the Holocaust. He formed the Einsatzgruppen, the mobile killing squads, and he was heavily involved in the building of extermination camps. Okay, so in terms of all of those things, which are, I guess, part of, the infamous Nazi regime, Himmler is incredibly important. Right, I'm going to talk about now those who aided Hitler, okay, or those who appeased Hitler. Now, not necessarily strong, loyal allies, but people who very much played a role and very much allowed Hitler to come to power and to get away with the things that he was doing. So the people I'm going to go through, I've got Paul von Hindenburg and Franz von Papen. So I'm going to start with Hindenburg. Now, Hindenburg was the German general and statesman who commanded the Imperial German Army during World War I and became president of Germany from 1925 until his death during the Weimar Republic. It is he who appoints Hitler Chancellor of Germany in 1933. So if we ever had to select somebody who, put their hand into pushing Hitler forward, it was absolutely Hindenburg. Secondly, I want to talk about Papen. So Papen served as the Chancellor of Germany in 1932 and Vice Chancellor under Adolf Hitler, 33 and 34. He was appointed Chancellor by Hindenburg but failed to achieve support in the Reichstag. He was replaced with Kurt von Schleicher. So in a bid to regain power, he persuaded Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as Chancellor and himself as Vice Chancellor, thinking this was going to get him back into power. Unbeknown to him, he was actually pushing Hitler onto the seat of power, and Hitler had no cares to try and rescue him as such and bring him with him. Papen actually leaves government after the Night of the Long Knives. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the people now who are purged or removed or got rid of from within as such. So people who fell out with Hitler, people who Hitler no longer needed, people who Hitler betrayed. These people played a role in our Weimar Germany and met their end because they fell out with Hitler. So I'm going to go through all of these people, and I'm going to start with Werner von Blumberg. So Werner von Blumberg was the German General Staff Officer. He was appointed Chief of the Troop Office during the Weimar Republic and Minister of the War of the Armed Forces of Nazi Germany. He was a supporter of Hitler and National Socialism, but did not believe in subjecting the military to the control of the Nazi Party. So that's where they fell out. His political opponent, Hermann Goering, confronted him with criminal records and alleged allegations of pornographic activities with his wife, which forced him to resign. Now, Bloomberg, I guess, is one of those people who lost out due to the very competitive nature of the Nazi state. And when we look at the next big overarching question about the terror state, we're going to think about, how far the fact that we had quite a chaotic, quite a feudal-like system of loyalty, how far that disadvantaged or affected and impacted the workings and of the German state. And a lot of people lost power, a lot of people lost position due to this competitive nature of the Hitler myth and the leadership principle they ran by. Everyone trying to fight it out to become Hitler's kind of closest, most trusted ally. It wasn't really the most effective way of running government. You lost talent, you lost people along the way to this kind of infighting. Now, next I'm going to talk about Schleicher. So he was the last Chancellor of Germany during the Weimar Republic. He was murdered by the SS in the Night of the Long Knives in 1934. Gregor Strasser, so an influential and important figure in the NSDAP. He was imprisoned after the Beer Hall Putsch, and he was also murdered during the Night of the Long Knives in 1934 after a personal and ideological rivalry with Hitler. He wanted to pull the left side of the NSDAP to his more conservative side to try and stop Hitler. So somebody early on who was trying to prevent Hitler from taking this kind of full-on control that he did. Gustav Ritter von Kahr, so a German right-wing politician active in Bavaria. He was instrumental in the collapse and suppression of Adolf Hitler's Beer Hall Putsch, and he was also murdered in the Night of the Long Knives, 1934. And finally, Ernst Röhm, a very close friend of Hitler and co-founder of the SA. If you remember, Hitler then removed him. He thought he was a potential rival. He did not like the influence Röhm had over the SA, and he was executed or murdered, assassinated in the Night of the Long Knives. Now, that was an overview, very quick overview of all of the very most important people that you absolutely need to know, remember, and have context of in our position of moving into the German state after Hitler has become the Führer, and he has just won power through through his rise to power, you know, the enabling Night of the Long Knives and the Reichstag fire, etc. Okay, so quick whistle top tour of the most important people in Nazi Germany at this point.